I'm Robin Miller Brecker.
And I'm Karen Lenzer. Welcome to Seeking Center, the podcast.
Join us each week as we have the conversations and weed through the spiritual and holistic clutter for you. We'll boil it down to what you need to know now.
We're all about total wellness, which to us means building a healthy life on a physical, mental, and spiritual level. We'll talk to the trailblazers who will introduce you to the practices, products, and experiences that may be just what you need to hear about to transform your life.
If you're listening to this, it's no accident. Think of this as your seeking center and your place to seek your center. And for the best wellness and spiritual practitioners, experts, products, experiences, and inspo, visit theseekingcenter.com. Are you looking for more passion, meaning, and balance in your life? Are you at a career crossroads and are looking for clarity and support? Do you know in your heart that you are meant for something different or more impactful? Have you thought about doing your own thing, creating a life on your terms, but don't know where to begin or have trouble taking consistent action or managing it all? Meet Dr. Sweta Chawla. She is an author and renowned leadership coach who also speaks the languages of goal setting, emotional intelligence, somatics, biology, mysticism, intuition, quantum science, energy medicine, creativity, feminine power, strategy, not to mention English, Spanish, and Hindi. She has walked the walk and transformed her own life. She knows your highest potential lies in who you are, not in who you think you should be. She now lives to guide you to reclaim your power and fully step into your innate leadership potential, creating new possibilities for work and life. Hi, Dr. Sweta.
Hello.
Hello. So great being here with you both.
That first paragraph grabbed me right off the bat. We're all looking for that balance. We're all looking for that clarity and figuring out exactly who we are. How do we be impactful? How do we really step into the light of who we truly are and not the should of who we think we should be? So I can't wait to have this conversation.
Me too. And I definitely think a lot of people are asking those questions, especially now in the time in the world that we're in. It's even louder.
Big time. And you have walked the walk. You've transformed your own life. Can you talk about your upbringing, your previous very successful professional life, and how that led you to your own crossroads?
Absolutely. I'm going to try to keep this. It's so rich, obviously, as most transformation journeys are very layered. But to give you the high level picture, I'm an immigrant. I was born in India. I came to the US when I was very young. So I was only 2 years old. And I had this interesting dichotomy of being born in another country and then trying to assimilate in the US. And I share that because when it comes to these identity challenges, I've had them throughout my life, and it started very young. And Asian culture, I grew up in a home that's a very stereotypical immigrant Asian culture where it's all about opportunity. It's all about getting good grades. It's all about getting a good job. My mom had an arranged marriage. She wanted to be a doctor and she couldn't. And so I felt that longing and that importance felt even heavier in my house. And so I got good grades, went through college, high school, et cetera. And then when it came time to decide on where do I go to school? What do I major in? I chose the pharmacy route. And my newsletter is called Connect the Dots because there's a thread that runs through your life. And my brother told me pharmacy would be good for a girl. I didn't know this at the time, but I was trying to get out of the house. My family was very why would you live on campus? It's expensive. There's no, it's good for your life experience. That's not what the immigrant kind of thought process is. And so I created a scheme that if I get into a 6-year PharmD program that's far away enough from home, then I wouldn't have to stay at home. And I ended up getting into a program in Philly. So I went to school in Philly in a pharmacy D program. I still had to live with family for the first year.
Wow. There was family in Philly?
Yeah, there was family. And then I hated pharmacy school as far as what I was studying, but I didn't have the courage, right? It was one of those, I loved the freedom. I loved being away from home. And I didn't think I could have both and. And so I had to sacrifice one for the other. And so I chose to stick it through. And towards the end, I was like, oh my God, what could I do? I do not see myself working in a CVS. A lot of people go through extra training like residency and they become clinical pharmacists. And I didn't see that as my path either. But this is where I always say you can't miss your purpose. It's always looking for you. And somehow, just somehow, I got introduced to academia. So I had a mentor who was bringing me into all these opportunities because where I ended up doing a residency, I happened to be very close to my university. And so I created my own like kind of mentors and guides. So I went to this one mentor that I liked the way she taught, and I heard about some of the things that she did. She did a lot of patient care. So that part of pharmacy and healthcare is what I was always connected to, is the counseling, the wellness. I'm a coach now, right? So it's like these breadcrumbs were always there. And this is what I always tell my clients. Even if you think you're really off kilter, the universe is always trying to guide you. It's, do we pay attention? And somehow I ended up in academia. So I got a job as a professor in Brooklyn, New York, and I worked there for a decade. And initially, I loved it. I really enjoyed what I did. And I can tell you why now, because my clinical practice site was a place where I got to be very innovative, and I created wellness programs and preventative care. I did a lot of counseling, a lot of collaborating with a variety of folks. I'm a Gemini. I need that variety. So I worked with doctors. I led student programs. I did so much. But a few years in, I started to lose that light, and I didn't know what it was until I went on a sabbatical. So when I went on a sabbatical, I started to grab books from the library. I remember one time I said to someone, if you start watching Oprah, and I know that's resonant with you guys, and you go to Barnes and Noble looking for magazines. And I used to look for the Oprah magazine because there weren't that many books back then, for something to guide me in what I would say now is like your soul calling. And that was the way I knew. So it was like, what color's your parachute? All these different books. And it's kind of cliche, but it was on a mountaintop in South Africa. I had my first experience of what I would say is that feeling of oneness, where I really felt touched by the divine. I was literally looking at a sun setting on a mountaintop, and I just felt this wave of peace wash over me. And I didn't know what it was. And I said, nothing in my life has changed. When in that moment where I wasn't feeling right, I was looking and being that go-getter East Coaster, I'm going to solve problems, to just be looking at a sunset and have this feeling that I didn't even know I was yearning come to me. It was just mind blowing. And after that, I had a few different experiences. And I remember one time a friend of mine said, you don't really know God, because I used to read a lot of books. I used to read a lot of self-help and spiritual books, and I could talk about it intellectually, but I didn't have those experiences. And so I literally Googled, how do you know God?
Wow.
I swear, I think Google has like a cosmic connection, because somehow I landed on a page and it said, just invite the divine in before you go to sleep. And I did. And so I said, okay, come. And the most unexpected thing happened. I was getting married at the time, and my husband's Catholic and I'm not Catholic. And so we were getting married in a Catholic church in Peru. He's from Peru. So we had to go through pre-Cana. And so I had a priest that I was working with, and I was on the pulpit with my priest, and all my childhood bullies were underneath me, and I forgave them all. And I woke up with that same feeling of peace. And I remember walking to the gym, and it was like one of those movies where I was like looking at the tree and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. It was like, you would think I was high. It was mind blowing for me, because I didn't even know that was something I thought about. Bullied when I was a kid. And so it was those little kind of pieces, but I didn't really embrace this. I came back from my sabbatical, went back to work as normal. I was renewed. I completely redesigned my work in the same position and stayed for 6 more years or something like that. It was impactful, but that wasn't where I lived. I still definitely came back to the quote unquote normal world. And it wasn't until my son was born premature. That's when I started to really go deeper in my own healing journey, because my entry to motherhood was very disappointing. He was only 2 pounds, 9 ounces when he was born. And I had very high hopes for motherhood, very high hopes. I thought that was the thing that was going to permanently give that feeling of love that I was seeking, but it was devastating. And there's a Rumi quote that says, it's like the wound is where the light is. And that's totally my journey. And I just went on a deep dive of, what am I doing all of this for? Why am I working so hard if it's not working out? On top of that, I didn't get a promotion that I applied for after maternity leave that I thought it was a shoo-in for. So it was just like a double whammy. And I hired a coach, and It was so much more than coaching. It was the time that I started to really pay attention to me and ask those bigger questions of what do I want? What do I really want? And one thing led to another. And I started just embracing my creativity. I started writing. I wrote a blog. I wrote a book. I picked up my family and moved from New York to California because I just felt like we needed a change and we had no jobs. It was just, we made a list, nature, community, and I was out here for a workshop. I saw a few signs. I saw some owls. We're on Zoom, so you could see I have an owl behind me. And next thing you know, I called up my husband and I said, I think we're supposed to move to Northern California. And he was in Peru at the time. And he was like, okay. And our condo in New York got sold in a week. And it wasn't renting for 2 months. And so we came out here with no jobs, 5 suitcases, and we've been here for 8 years. And I'll save this for later because I think we're going to get into it. But here is where I found that divine feminine and that connection. And that has been a big part of my transformational journey to become who I am now as a coach and doing really the work that I'm meant to do in the world. I think teaching was always part of it. And that's why I feel like the universe was putting me on that track, but pharmacy definitely wasn't. I discovered I only did pharmacy because my mom wanted to be a doctor. It's pretty cliche. And I subconsciously was trying to fulfill her.
What a journey.
Yeah, that's a big, I know that's a lot.
It's amazing to see how you shifted that perspective from the shoulds to the maybe I can. Followed that sense of purpose on your own. Was there a moment with that coach? What was the transformative thing, would you say, that really made you make that shift to having the courage to let go that should expectation world and go to where you felt like you were really being called to go?
Yeah, there was 2 very specific moments that I can share with you. One was the beginning, my excuse of why I couldn't go for what I wanted was I had this, again, like transformational trip to Israel when my son was 9 months old. And I was just sitting across the Sea of Galilee and just crying and crying. And I didn't know at the time, but that's when I was grieving. And I really think this sacred land, I just want to name that, like really helped me to have the courage to, I think, feel the pain, feel the darkness and feel the wound, because I think I always had this strength comes from being able to overcome and solve problems. And that's why I was always trying to solve it. But it's in the feeling and healing and letting go piece that is really the most potent part. And when I came back from that trip, that's when the seed planted of maybe I can have the life I want. Maybe I don't have to sacrifice. So but I still have that mental of I can't leave my job. I'm the breadwinner. We have a mortgage. My son is a preemie. My husband was from Peru. He didn't speak English. He was getting educated. There was just so many really valid, logical reasons. It made no sense. But the one I hung on to was we need health insurance. That was the one I hung on to. And she said to me, lots of people find a way to get insured, freelancers, families. I think there's something underneath this. I think you're afraid of change. And it was like she took a mask off of me. I just started to cry and I was like, yeah, this is all I've known. It was my first job. I was in it for 10 years. And I think from a greater perspective, I've only known a life of you have to sacrifice. You can't have both. And so it just was, I think, naming that really what's at the core of this was really impactful. And then another one was where she had me write up my dreams. And I was, again, this East Coast New Yorker. I got a job. I don't have time to dream. Come on. It felt so, and I hear this from my clients who are those high achievers, right? Like it feels so frou-frou. It doesn't feel really, but I went for it, right? And it was amazing because I couldn't even dream outside of pharmacy. And suddenly I was like, ooh, maybe I could be a travel concierge. Maybe I could be this. It was suddenly like, this world of possibility opened up. And so I think the 2 things are just naming really what's at the root of the fear. And the second one is permission to live in possibility and to explore, which when you're on a success path, that's not a place that we tend to go to.
One quick thing on permission, because it came up this morning. So I'm a runner. That's my meditation in the morning. And I thought about the word permission today. So funny you said that word, because I thought about it for a minute and I'm like, permission. We all are looking for permission so often from our parents, like you did, from our spouses, for our kids, from our bosses. It's always about permission to do what we want. And then I looked at the word again and it's permission. If you look at the word that way,
Karen, love that.
it just struck me. permission. It should be about your permission, per your mission, per your
Each
per-
mission. Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
And the one thing when it comes to so many people I work with, like women that are very high achieving, women in venture capital that are moving lots of money, having huge impact. And this morning I had to fill out what are some common themes because I coach these venture capitalist clients. And it was really permission for them to do what they want, how they want. That was the biggest thing.
Wow.
No matter how achieved you may be, I think, especially with women. And the one thing that I love to reframe is exactly what you just said, not as awesome as you said it, permission. But one of the reasons why it's so hard to give ourselves permission is because we are so relationship oriented. And oftentimes we think that if we do what we want, it's selfish and somehow we're negating our responsibilities. But I always say that responsibility becomes a place of possibility when you honor yourself too. And that's the thing that I really have to name for them. My gift is naming, is to show them it's this new paradigm of selfishness, is that when you give to yourself, you actually give to others. And so when you fulfill your permission, I had to experience it before I believed it. I just had this belief that if I do the things I want, it's going to hurt my family. And from my blood family to now my son and my husband. And every time I can find the courage to give myself permission, I'm amazed at how much it actually supports my family. And it could be a small decision. Like fall is always very full for me. I always get really overwhelmed. I sometimes get sick, and school is very challenging for my son. It's new school, beginning of year. And so I want to go into that over masculine of let's fix it, make sure my husband responds to everything the way he needs and blah, 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 whatever. And then it always is a disaster. And instead, what I did this year was I gave myself self-care before I even needed it, which looked like booking Airbnbs for the weekend and with hot tubs and telling my family in the pool and saying to them, you can come for an hour and then you need to get out so I can have the whole space to myself. And it was game changing. All the things I wanted for my husband to take more responsibility with my son, for me to not feel so stressed happened, but it didn't happen the way that I was trying to force it to happen. I just had to give myself permission to give myself what I needed and wanted.
Oh, I think so many people need to hear that. I really do. We both have conversations with women in the corporate space who they're just like, there is no time. And they're so tired. And I'm like, you need to schedule time. It's just like sometimes now I have to schedule time to catch up with a friend because we're all managing so many things in our lives, including whether it's meditation or working out or whatever it is, going to sit in the hot tub. You have to make yourself that priority. That permission is huge. It ends up helping and it gives back in so many more ways than you would ever think.
Absolutely. And so when one of the languages that I have to speak is return on investment for some of my clients. And so I remember just having a call with a client last week and we were planning for her next season. And I have this whole process called Name Your North Star that helps you to really prioritize and focus based on what's calling you and what you want. So both of those. And so I had to show her data. Like I always say, what's your data? So part of you mentioned in the beginning, I have this framework called natural leadership, and you are natural is your design. It's very texty, you are, but showing her that the time that she prioritized to have one-on-one dates with her children, she has 2 children, the return on investment for that for her was days, like days. She says, I still think about it. And that's why I always say not all time is the same. So when you're doing time management, it's not about the hours, it's about the quality. What's the quality of the things that you're spending time on? Because those things give a return on investment that can really give you more energy, whatever it is that you value connection. And that could look different for me. It's time away from my child, for her, it's time with her child. That's why I say it's your design and your data that you really need to know.
And then from an impact perspective, I find really just using that example, my daughter, she's now 15. For years, she's always said to my husband and I, who's taking me here? Or who am I having dinner with, depending on the night? And a lot of times it's the 2 of us. And she'll be like, oh, and we're like, what? Why? She's like, I really prefer my one-on-one time with each of you.
Wow.
And so to that point of think about that too. And my husband, we do now honor that even though Jeff and I like it when we all hang out, but we actually understand.
It's a good thing because from a should perspective, bringing it back to the should versus what's actually true is I know I have a lot of on my shoulds, like family should eat together at the dinner table. And part of the permission I had to give myself this year was to be okay with doing like that does not signify a healthy family connection. And we both took trips separately this year. So I went to Mexico and my husband went to Peru and I was like, things were so much better at home. And I know we're using a lot of family examples and there's with work too, there's just so many areas of life, but really the thing that is get your data, explore what's genuinely true for you versus what are the shoulds that you may have made up. And so the N in my framework is notice your narrative. So shape your stories before they shape you, because we all have these beliefs that come from our conditioning, our upbringing, et cetera, society, and then we don't even question them.
And that actually came up. We're taping this in December. I know this will post in January. And this morning, all over the morning TV shows this morning was about partners who sleep in separate beds.
Oh,
right? Or separate bedrooms even. And my husband and I were talking about it, and it's really each to their own, right? Who is to say what works for you works for everyone?
yeah.
It is. It's like re-looking at all your shoulds. That's like the first place to start. And you can immediately feel the energy around the word should, can't you? It's, there's that cringy kind of responsibility, heaviness that goes along with it. So even if you started making that list of all the things I should do, that's probably a really good indicator.
Yeah. What are the said and unsaid rules you live by that don't serve you?
Yeah, exactly. It's really what's going to pull you closer to who you are.
That in itself is revolutionary because so much of one of the shoulds that I know I've lived by that's very big in my culture is in US culture is hard work. Work has to be hard. This is work right now. This feels a lot. That doesn't feel hard to me at all.
Great.
That's how we always feel that way. Yeah, this is
Right?
not work.
That's when you know you're in line with what your soul wants you to be doing.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that doesn't mean that you don't have to put an effort and you might not have to sometimes do things you don't want to do. But the difference is that I don't consider that hard work. I consider that devotion. It's devotion to your mission, to the thing that you care, because it's connected to something bigger. And you're willing to do that because it's for your mission, for your purpose versus I have to do this because I have to put in my time or I have to prove myself or because I need to get promoted because I look this way. It's a totally different motivation.
Wow. I love that framing of devotion. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. When my son was just a baby at 4 months, I remember when I first started to explore this world of who am I? What should I be doing? I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, breastfeed him, and then start writing my blog. And I wrote a book when he was just a couple of years old. And everybody was like, how are you doing so much? And I was like, here's the crazy thing. I'm like getting less sleep, but I feel so much more energized because this is coming from me and my heart and my soul. It's something I really want to be doing. I feel the purpose. I didn't know what it was going to turn into. I had no idea, but it filled me up while I was doing it. And it wasn't for anybody else, but for me. And ironically, when we moved out here, I had switched into trying to make my writing be a business and support my family and blah, blah, blah. And it was awful. I was doing the same stuff, but the motivation for it was completely. And I remember the very last blog I wrote for my one website. It was like I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I wrote it from my heart. And it was so profound because I felt that same way I felt when I first started blogging, which was I thought I had failed my family. And while I was writing it, I realized I had failed myself. And this is going to sound, I'm just going to say it, but I started prostituting my art and it was no longer for me. It had to give something back to me and it lost its magic. And it's important because sometimes we do need to have, if we're in business, we're creating something, we need that reciprocity, but it's the self-awareness to know what's your motivation. And at that point, I made this very conscious decision of I was trying to get my creative needs met through work. And instead, I was like, let me just get my creative needs met. And it was giving myself permission to, that's actually what I'm needing and wanting right now. And so I started painting. I became a theater critic reviewer, like improv, like all these things. And then I came back to my work and my business from a whole different, I wasn't trying to get my needs met sideways. I fully gave to myself and then I could fully give to my work. And it's become one of the values of my work, which is to create from wholeness. It's subtle, but these real powerful distinctions that we make and the choices we make that we need to name. And I don't think we know how to. The world doesn't. And so that's one of my contributions to the world, is to name these experiences that are so collective. I've talked to lots of people like you that are just going through the same exact thing.
We get so caught up in that loop of just getting through the day, doing what we need to do, of doing all the shoulds, that it's almost like you feel like you can't get out of it, and that you are stuck in a place that you can't get out of. You just don't know how to break out of that cycle.
It's so fascinating to me, because when I first started blogging, I was on this whole mission, like Moms Against Martyrism, ma'am, this little thing that I made, but the world was so not on board with that. This was pre-2016. We've gone through such a huge revolution in the last several years. And it was so fascinating to me, because several clients that I've worked with recently, when we say, what's your focus? They've actually used the language of, I want to release the martyr. And these are moms and non-moms. So you don't have to be a mom to have that place that you operate from of sacrifice. And it was just amazing to me that finally, like I said, I think the world is catching up to really getting how important it is to lead like a goddess, as I like to say.
Which is the perfect segue to talk about the divine feminine and divine masculine. And what does balance mean? What do you define balance as? And what are those terms? Because I don't think everybody listening have heard of them in the way that we may have.
So I use the word balance because that's what others use. And that's the word that they imagine for themselves, or actually they're feeling the pain of the imbalance of, I don't feel that it's prioritizing myself and what I care about and what I want to create with my work and my friendships and community and family, et cetera. Really, the word that I'm coming from is this place of harmony. To me, harmony it's just a little bit more nuanced than balance. We tend to think balance is like 50-50, et cetera. And that's not sustainable or possible in this world. It really isn't. And I think we waste a lot of energy if we're looking for this kind of, the DEI world, they talk a lot about equality versus equity. And so that it's the same concept when I think about harmony, which is it's not always about being equal, but it's about giving your energy to what is really being needed and what you're being called to. And as I mentioned, I have this framework called your North Star Clarity Tool, which folks can grab if they want. I have a link, Dr. Sweta Chawla /natural, where I talk about my framework and I share this tool. But the reason why I created it is because I feel like it has 4 inquiries that help you to get to this place of what I call harmony. And when you want to come to this place of harmony, you need both your feminine and your masculine. And so to unpack that a little bit, the masculine energy is a lot of what the structures that we currently live in are based on. This is not about gender. It's not about men and women, but it's a frequency and it's an energy. And so masculine, it's structure, it's focus, it's tenacity. Unfortunately, a lot of the structures and the way we operate are in the shadow masculine, where it's force and control and rigidity. And so I think part of the journey is not only about bringing in the feminine, which is not as, from a balance perspective, from a harmony perspective, there isn't enough feminine. So going back to that, equity, we definitely need more feminine energy. And that is the energy of nuance. It's frequency over form. It's permission. It's desire. It's receiving, right? Instead of pushing. If we use, even though it's not gender, but we do look at the anatomies of a human. And if we look at the anatomy of the earth, right, we call the earth Mother Earth. It's the feminine body has a yoni. It receives and the seed is planted and then it births new life. So I always say the feminine is about using power to create, not control. Whereas the shadow masculine is that control piece of it. The earth, the same thing. You plant a seed and it births new life. And so I think a lot of the way the world has been set up has been, and even the conversations around feminism, unfortunately, have come through as a either or one against the other. And that's not really what we need. If we're really going to thrive, we need one to support the other. And when we do, we come into a place of harmony. So that's high level. And we can talk about more of the specifics. Okay, what does that look like?
Yeah. Because how does somebody take those concepts and assess themselves and integrate that into their lives?
Yes, that's such a great question. And it's one of the reasons why I do the work I do, because I believe that part of my work is creating structures for bringing the unseen into the seen, for bringing the magic into practical, and using my gifts of language, of being a Gemini, of being able to, and that comes back to this unique design and unique gift that we all have. If I went on a job interview, or if I had to put on a resume, I wouldn't write on there copywriter of the soul, or I'm a namer, but I know that to be able to even have that identified for yourself, to know that's your unique brilliance that you bring into the world, and to be able to articulate it in a masculine world. So the feminine is a feeling, it's an energy, right? So many interactions that we just know because we feel it. I gave a talk to a group of healthcare physicians, primarily women, and it was empowering women in healthcare. And I talked about the 3 feminine advantages in leaderships. And one of them was that intuition, and how the feminine is intuitive. It feels, it doesn't need the articulation and the word and the form. It just knows. And the amount of comments in the chat of these physicians who said, I have saved so many lives based on my intuition, but then having a masculine system to say, where's the data to prove that? And then questioning themselves.
And I want to point out to people, again, there are many men that have many feminine qualities.
Oh, totally.
Just because you're born a woman doesn't fully.
You have a blend of all of them.
I want to underscore.
Yeah. And I've had many men clients that also don't feel belonging and acceptance because they have a strong feminine energy. And I want to say the world is recognizing that they don't use this language. I do a lot of leadership training, I do speaking, etc. The language is empathy. The language is emotional intelligence, compassion. These things in leadership is basically saying, let's bring the feminine into leadership.
That is so true. Oh my goodness.
And I think I see it more and more. I think of that openness, but I think to your earlier point, the structure of the corporate world is built in that masculine energy. So it's a lot harder to infuse that with the feminine. I just wanted you to go back to talk about that little phrase, copywriter of the soul. That's beautiful.
I know. I love that. I wrote it down because I'm like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. Yes.
Talk about what that means.
So this actually, somebody else said that about me several years ago when they'll say, what's your unique value proposition? And then I described how I have this ability to be able to name what people are experiencing. It really affects their lives, but it's so subtle. And they don't even know, just like how my coach did for me when she said, I think what you're really talking about is that you're afraid of change, but it was coming up in my resistance. And I think I have the ability to do that as well. And going back to design, I'm just going to throw in a structure that I think is really both an example of feminine, masculine, which is astrology. Astrology is a system, it's a structure, right? But there's so much nuance in it. And in astrology, there's 3 very important signs. We're all very familiar with our sun sign, but we have our rising and our moon. And your moon is like your emotional, you were born, your karma, the way that you just feel. And your rising, to me, is they say it's your soul. It's what you can rise into to fulfill your mission, which is often displayed by your sun sign. And I didn't know what mine were because I was born in India. They don't put time. And then I got a rectification and I found out I was a Cancer rising. And the sign of Cancer is the feminine. And I'm having an aha, even as I speak about this, as I'm talking to you. And this is the way the feminine works. It's the moon. It is the feminine. And part of my work in the world is bringing the feminine forth. You're rising into, and my Gemini is about that ability to speak to it. I just love it because I just connected that dot as I'm speaking to you. And that's part of what Copywriter for the Soul is, that I'm very good at connecting the dots. So I always tell my clients, ramble. They always say I'm rambling. I invite you to ramble because I can connect the dots and see how one thing is connected to another, and then speak it in a way that helps you to understand yourself better.
Do you start with astrology with people who come and you work? Is that part of the experience with you?
So I am not an astrologer, but I have had some training. I'm an astro nerd. I consider myself an astrology translator. And that's the theme. I'm a translator in general. So I don't do readings, but I help it make sense for people. And like how I just explained to you, when someone's going through something, I'm like, oh, I can see it's because you have this planet, et cetera. And so I humanize it for people. And I weave it in if a client wants it, if they bring it up. So it's not something I lead with.
You're using that too as this, for that example, as a structure.
Exactly.
Right? And talking about how do we take all of what you're introducing to people and applying it to their everyday? How does somebody start to become aware of their own imbalance, most likely?
Yes. It's so interesting because it's something, and one of the reasons why my framework is called natural leadership, because I really believe to be a leader, it's about being who you are. And oftentimes things are so natural for you that you don't even realize how much value it brings and why you don't have to work so hard, but actually really be able to know, embrace, and express who you are. And that begins with reflection. It just begins with reflection. And I've always been a reflector. I've journaled since I was like 8, and I didn't realize, not even until recently, and I've been doing this work for a long time, how hard it is for people to reflect.
Yeah. People don't want to look back. They don't. They really don't. And it's not something that's taught. You had the intuition to start journaling. It's natural to you.
Yes.
And to most people don't want to take the time.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just going to be very explicit about the benefit of it. And it's the reason, again, why the you are in my framework is your design, because you want to very masculine, set goals and plans based on your data. It saves time. It literally saves time. So we're recording this on the solstice, and I actually have a workbook that's all about reflection and planning to end the year and then start the beginning of the year. And so when you were talking about from a practical place, where do you start? I would say is this energy right near the solstice is all about reflection. And just to weave in again a little bit of astrology, take it for whatever it's worth. Some people, they feel the support of that, some don't. The planets are in retrograde right now. We're in Mercury retrograde. You've probably heard about Mercury, and you say, don't take a flight and you're going to have technology issues, etc. But really, retrograde is about reflection, and Mercury is our mind. So it's such a potent time to say, I don't know about you, but I can tell you there's definitely things happening in my life that feel very cyclical, like old stuff that just keeps, oh my God. And if we take time to reflect and say, okay, what is the pattern that's coming up here? What is it trying to teach me? What can I learn from it? Because I want to name something that is, I don't know that it's ever so explicitly spoken about, but it's so common, which is a lot of our fear and resistance around giving ourselves permission to do what we want, to go for where we're being called, is based on old data of painful experiences. And so our nervous system is designed to protect us. And if we don't do the reflection work and get curious and notice our narrative and release and name, we're operating on holding ourselves back to protect us from something that's already happened.
Yeah, right? I'm having such an aha right now. And I think a lot of people relate to that fear of wanting to write that stuff, why they're afraid, just as you said, to reflect, because it makes them go back and revisit all of the things they either have suppressed within themselves to be the pharmacist or to be the thing that everybody wants them to be, or they have to relive those moments that they may not be proud of. And I think so many people are comfortable putting goals out there because it's like, those are the things that I will achieve. And those are the things that we'd be proud of. And those are the things I will strive to do in the future versus you're saying, look back, because that's really showing you who you really are and will drive your path forward to where you really are meant to go.
Absolutely.
I love that. I can feel that in my own life, how I'm always trying to look ahead, always trying to put myself down the road versus really take the time to do that work to make sure I'm on the course, make sure I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah. I call Rumi, the Sufi poet, the OG coach. And a lot of my work, when I work with people, is based on 2 of his quotes. And the first quote is, your job is not to seek success, but to investigate all the barriers you've put up against it. And so this goes back to that release. And I had a client a couple of weeks ago where one of the things she was afraid to give herself permission to do was to say no to an investment. And it didn't feel right to her. But one of her fears was that if she says no, that her name is going to get spoiled. And I just said to her, has that happened to you ever? And she was like, oh my God. And then she had that, yeah, it already happened, right? Like in another situation. And I said, so what did you learn from it? Because if you can name what you learned from it, then it will help you to be more courageous, because it's like you have a plan for the thing that you are afraid of. So I always say, don't diminish the goal setter and the plan. I work with lots of very masculine, strong planners, go-getters. We don't say, oh, you, and I remember when I first went into a divine feminine circle, I was like, I'm not going to like frolic in the forest with like flowers on my head. And, and now I do that though. The ironic thing is I will totally do that now. But we don't make these other parts of ourselves wrongs. We just reassign them. And to me, that's what being the goddess leader is. It's the matriarch. It's the feminine. It's the one that understands that bigger picture and chooses. I always have this image of that woman has a million arms and she's like trying to juggle everything. And my lineage, my Hindu lineage, our goddesses have several arms, but it's not this frazzled, I'm trying to do everything. It's I'm the center and I can go to all these places. I have the ability. And I always say one of the feminine advantages of leadership is diversity, and to be able to have the moon is the symbol and has 8 phases. And a lot of women are like, because the masculine pressure of I need to be identified a certain way, I need to act like this, etc. And it's no, sometimes you're full on, full moon, bright, shining. And sometimes you're in the dark and you're in the quiet. And those are the times that you want to be able to go within and reflect and ask those deeper questions. And look, I'm going to acknowledge it's not easy. It's hard. That's why it took me to almost lose my son to be able to do this deeper healing work. That's why I always say, though, if you can get the support, and part of it is podcasts like this to normalize this. And it doesn't have to be heavy and it doesn't have to be hard. If you embrace the feminine in it, like I have a moon circle, I have 5 women I meet with every month, and we text each other our really hard moments. And then we also message each other when we're like, I'm kicking ass. We celebrate each other in joy too. And so even in my lineage during Navratri, which is the 9 nights of the goddess, it's 3 goddesses. It's Kali, it's Lakshmi, and it's Saraswati. And so you have many arms, but you also have your sisters with you. So you don't go it alone. And my natural leadership framework started with a blog on career and identity shifts. And I had these 3 aspects to it, which is letting go, then creating your own narrative, like dating yourself, and then creating new worlds, new possibility. And that was the first iteration of my natural leadership framework. And the goddess, I didn't plan it, but it was publishing during Navratri. I didn't know that. And I literally had Kali come to me and say to me, these are our energies. You need to include us in this.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Just to wrap up what we were talking about, facing your emotions and the letting go. I just, one kind of very practical thing, a way to support ourselves around this is to, especially like, again, this energy right now, I think this is being published in the New Year's, and you can always do this at any time. But when you recognize those things that are painful, you can surrender them. You write it down and you literally bring in nature and bring in the earth, bring in a fire, burn it to let it go. One of the things I've discovered in giving myself time to reflect is this all or nothing attitude. You know what I mean? And that's the thing I'm letting go this year. And it's really powerful. And when you see that shift, then it becomes easier to go back and reflect and have this, I'm going to learn from it. I'm not going to be swallowed in that pain. I'm actually going to learn from it. And it's going to give me the plan to be courageous.
Thank you. I really feel like people listening to this right now, it's on purpose that you're listening to this episode. And this is actually going to kick off our whole new year, which is absolutely purposeful, because I think there's so many people who are going to want to start this new calendar year with new energy, with understanding, and on the road to understand who they really are and make a change.
Absolutely. Which is what that natural leadership framework is really.
I know you've mentioned the natural leadership framework and we mentioned it in the end. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
So it started off as a blog around career shifts and identity and then changes. And then I was asked to speak at WeWork and I was like, I can't speak about the goddesses, right? And so this is again where and to me, this is very feminine. There's a difference between camouflaging yourself because of a should, because of how I want to present, look, et cetera, versus being conscious about, because the feminine is relationship oriented, and knowing that the way I present myself, I am going to use my diversity to adapt for the purpose of the receiver receiving it. And because I was a people pleaser, total camouflage. And then I remember when I went on LinkedIn, I was like, oh my God, how do I be myself? And that's really what this whole natural leadership work is about, authenticity. And it was that, again, that conscious decision of, okay, I have to adopt about how I and the universe was giving me opportunity. So it's turned into this 3-phase natural leadership framework. And on a high level, it's about this self-awareness, right? Noticing your narrative. And then the second phase is that, and then letting go of those, what we just talked about, those stories, the shoulds, the unsaid rules, the said and unsaid rules that we have that hold us back. And then the middle part, which is about, it's the A in natural leadership is awaken your truth. So a lot of what we've been talking about, doing the reflection work. And then the T, which I think is the most powerful, which is what it stands for, which is take back your power. And this is where you write your own rules and you write them in alignment with the greater power that's holding you. We all, I think, have this unique connection to something greater than us, whether you call it the divine, whether you call it God, whether you call it goddesses, whatever. But I really believe there's something bigger in this world that's trying to support us. And our circumstances and experiences that we've gone through. And again, I don't make anything wrong, but we had to make choices to survive our environments. And oftentimes that meant giving up our power, and because our survival depended on it. So the things that I did, like going to pharmacy school, et cetera, it was my coping mechanism. And taking back your power is, I grew up in an environment where I couldn't freely express my passion. And I have so much passion. And part of it is I couldn't, part of it was I didn't have the tools to be courageous. And I remember somebody asked me, what do you think you learned from growing up in that experience? Right. And you can look back and you could say, and I do, I was like, my parents never nurtured me and my creativity, blah, 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 whatever. But I always found a way to make things happen. So I came up with the plan to get out of the house. That's what I wanted. When I wanted to dress a certain way, my brother would say, I'm not going to send you to school if you dress like that. I would put my clothes in my bag and then I'd go to school and I'd change, right? So that was a survival technique. But taking back my power now is being able to use those things that I relied on in a way that's not about survival, but as something that's a gift. Essentially, that is a gift that is not only for me, but for the world. I just posted on LinkedIn, my son is dyslexic and I've done a lot of work on supporting him. He's almost at grade level reading now, but I never once put it as a disadvantage. We always framed it as a strength. And I took him to see the governor when our governor wrote a book about this. He's dyslexic, and always just gave him these images of it's a strength. And he absolutely loves stories. So yeah, it's great. He's almost at grade level, but to me, that's the best way he learns. And that's where he gets the most joy. And this label did not take that away from him. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that it did when they were younger, right? So taking back your power is having that reframe of I'm too sensitive, I'm too this, I'm too that, and like actually seeing the superpower that's in it. My intro was I speak many languages, right? Before it was, oh, I'm all over the place, I'm so scattered. How do I position myself? And it was like, I'm a Gemini. I'm designed, which is what the you are, is you're designed to speak many languages and to have many ways of expression. And so again, that reframe, it's the same in the example with my son being dyslexic, right? It's like, you have a unique design. And I always say, I'm not a chess player, but I think it's such a beautiful metaphor for how every chess, whether you're a pawn, whether you're the king, whether you're the knight, you have different abilities. And we're always wanting to be the king or the queen because that's what society tells us is where the most power is. But the pawn can win the game.
How
and if
true.
you're right, if you're too busy trying to be the queen or be the king and you don't own being the pawn, then you are actually working hard and will not be able to win. Right. Which is ultimately what the AL in my framework is about, which is authentic leadership. It's about really knowing who you are, accepting who you are, and leading from that place. And I say leadership is not a title. It is not letters behind your name. It's really about honoring how you are being led. And when you honor how you're being led, it's for the greater good. There's collective growth in your own growth. And just going back to the feminine, a lot of us don't want to center ourselves because we're relationship-oriented people, but you're not centering yourself just to center yourself. You're actually centering yourself because it really serves in a greater way.
And you're also reflecting, you're becoming part of that collective. The thing I always say about any business environment, any even family, everybody brings something to the table. And it's not always supposed to look like every other place, every office, every family, everybody's all different, but it's letting everybody be seen in that environment is really how you can thrive.
Yeah. And to your point of centering yourself, that's why we created Seeking Center. It's about seeking your center. We are a seeking center, but we're also helping you seek your center so that you can be your best you in this world, which, as you said, is for the greater good.
Yeah.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah. Just look at Taylor Swift. I'm not a Swiftie, but she's such a great example. She's fully embraced who she is. She shares it like not being shy. And how much money has she brought into the system? And what does she do to pay her staff? Like she's given them all bonuses. She's created possibility for other people. And you don't have to be Taylor Swift. You don't have to be Beyonce. You don't have to be Oprah. There's so many unique ways that you can do this. But the point is just don't shy away from yourself.
And like to your point of using your son in dyslexia as an example, it just is. And it is a superpower. That's what helps make him. And the more we can do that with so many other labels and so forth, and we can dispel that and change the narrative on that, because there shouldn't be anything but pride, because that is you. That's your uniqueness.
Absolutely.
In this lifetime. I'm so grateful you brought that up. And I love that you brought Taylor Swift up as well. I've become a Swiftie because of my daughter. However, I think to your point, she, like Oprah and like others, they represent possibility for all of us. It's about how you celebrate with your other women in your moon circle. It's celebrating each other because that only helps all of us.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why it's so scary to be authentic is because so many people have had experiences that it's come with rejection. It's come with loss. It's come
That's
with.
true.
And so I will say it does take courage, and you might lose people. That might change. That might shift. You might have some painful experiences, but again, they're usually the experiences we're afraid of. We've already survived. And the more you embrace that, what I feel is that the more you are, you'll start to draw in the right people. And it's so much better to be able to be with people and be yourself than to be with people and feel like you have to be something different or hold yourself back.
How do you use all of these different resources and tools that you've now really come into and learned over these however many years? How do you use those in your work and also for yourself on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I'm a coach, also a speaker. And so the elements of everything I do are always threaded within my work. So it's really about be your natural leader. So take back your power and create new possibilities. That's my whole higher purpose and higher mission. And it shows up with my clients specifically. I create different frameworks, some ones I shared, like I said, and anybody listening just can download my natural leadership framework. And one of the tools, like name your North Star. I use that for my clients. I use it for myself. Every season I sit down and I reflect and I sit with those 4 questions and I create my North Star. And that's how I prioritize. I don't believe in ranking 1, 2, or 3. Like my creativity, myself, my well-being, and my family and my sacred work are all number 1. But I use this tool to help me to know how I'm being led and what my soul is craving to help me to know what's the focus for that season. So that's very specific. But it's solstice right now. I will do a solstice ritual. So I have a reflection planning guide that I use myself. And so when it comes to clients, it's a lot of the overarching natural leadership framework and then using these different tools. When it comes to speaking, it's really about my signature talks are Be the Leader You Want to Be in the World and The Feminine Advantage. And so I really use my gift of naming and articulation to be able to present this in a way so that it's relatable to the different worlds that we're coming from. So if you're in corporate, if you're in business, if you're a mom, so that I think people, one of the reasons why it's so much easier to just follow a laid out path is because then we don't have to make the decisions, right? It's been done and we have this quote unquote guarantee that we know what the outcome is. It takes tremendous amount of courage to be in the unknown. And I always say our paths are unique, but there are guideposts. And I feel like my job is to be able to offer these structures so that people feel safer to be courageous. And then it shows up in trainings too. So I do a lot of leadership development in organizations, but I also am a mural facilitator. And I love how this thread weaves in that. Like we go for team building into organizations, into schools, and I have a process that I'm certified in where it's so many of these threads of creating possibility by having a vision for something bigger that you've not seen before. And it expresses in so many different ways. I also do communications training, et cetera. Like I said, my design is I'm a Gemini, so I need lots of different ways to express myself, but I bring in the masculine and there's a North Star. There's a thread that's weaved through all of them. And how I operate and how I express in the world is definitely in coherence.
And I love how you give people the actual tools to be able to do these things. Can you suggest people like take different types of tools and see what works best for them? Or is it more of a format that they need to follow?
No. So even like this mural, for example, this is another example of how you use masculine and feminine energy. So there's certain principles. So my natural leadership framework is the framework, but how you might say, okay, I want to take my power back. I'm going to go look at her framework and I'm going to see, and I'll say, which one is the one that's calling you more? And so let's say it's notice your narrative. That's an easy one. And I'll say, I have a book. So my book is, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Now what? And it has 21 inquiries, and it's questions that will guide you to help you to notice your narrative. And that will awaken your truth also. Take your power back. I think that one would be like a coaching or a training or something, because that you need support for that. It's a little bit more of a stretch, and how it is to DIY that, I would say. Knowing your design, the same thing. Like you don't have to, you could work with an astrologer, you could work with somebody who does Enneagram. There's like lots of different ways to be able to access that. So I don't think that there's a starting point. And like I was saying with the murals I do, it's a process, and there's 4 consistent elements to every mural. There's a tree, there's an earth, there's a galaxy, but the way that it's expressed, there's 125 murals all around the world, and it's so unique. And so I see my framework as these kind of principles. When in the North Star Clarity tool that listeners can access here, there's 4 questions. So and I'm holding your hand through it, but there's so much space for interpretation that's unique, however you work it.
And how do you, for yourself, incorporate energy medicine or somatics or quantum science? How does that play into work and who you are?
So many different ways. I meditate a lot. So I had always wanted to meditate and I couldn't do it. But ironically, when I became a mother, the Deepak Chopra meditations came to me. And I think we shared on a call, I had a very profound experience on one of those meditations where I was in a medical intuition class and someone said, you need to forgive your parents. And I was like, for what? So I Googled, how do you authentically forgive dead parents? And a couple of days later, I got these Deepak Chopra meditations, and I was like, I think I'm supposed to do this. And the 4th one was on forgiveness. And I had a profound forgiveness meditation with my dad, and healed 17 years of neck pain. And I've had buy-in. So since then I meditated. And so I do meditation very regularly. I do mantra meditation, guided meditations. And then from an energy work perspective, before this call, and I'll give you some really like tangible, practical, easy things. I lit a candle and I said a prayer and I said, please, I called in goddesses and I said, hold the space so that those who are listening really receive what they need. So it's really about being intentional. And I set an intention every single morning. And sometimes that intention comes from my heart of what I need, but sometimes it's through, like you were saying earlier, Karen, like that word permission keeps coming to me. And so I also have an angel card that I read every single morning. And it's, oh my God, like today's really spoke to me. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to set my intention on that. So there's very tangible, practical things I do, but it's not rigid. It's ritualistic for me. After this evening, I'm going to do my solstice release ceremony with my husband. We're going to do our reflection for the solstice, and then we'll literally write down the things we want to release and burn them. So I hope that gives you somewhat of a picture.
I'm going to do that too.
I know. Sometimes it's overwhelming when you see all of the different ways people, and I love it when we can break it down to something really easy that we can all do. I love that.
Yeah. Just look back and what's been the most challenging experiences that I've had this year. I'm like, what's the theme that I'm seeing? Like I said, a couple of years ago for me, it was, oh, there's a lot of disruption. And then I panic. So I literally wrote down, I'm going to release panicking when there's disruption. And it's so powerful. I'm going to tell you, it's so powerful. A few months later, we were at an event and we locked our keys in the car. And the old me, I would have gotten so angry, so upset, tried to fix it. And I said, oh, we're at an event, we'll figure it out. And then suddenly I got this intuitive hit to call our insurance company. And I called them and they said, oh yeah, it's covered under your insurance and we're 5 minutes away.
Isn't that amazing when you can
Really listen?
The energy is so different. The energy that you put out there, because the panic is that resistance, right?
Yes.
And what you resist persists.
Exactly.
So when you can actually become aware of it
Yes.
in those moments and release it.
Yeah. Use that one. If that one resonates for you, use that one. Simplify. I'm really like all about make it as simple and resonant for you as possible. There's no prescription. So really pay attention to the way that you're drawn to do it.
Wow. This has been an aha.
A minute.
I know we will be talking to you again. And hopefully working together in the future. You are magnificent. You just have so much wisdom, which comes from that heart and from your own experience.
Yeah, walking the walk for sure.
And doing the work.
And that's what makes it so authentic and real and doable easily by people, because you've really shared what's impacted your own experience. And that's always the best advice to give. So I can't wait to read your book.
You have several, right?
I have one that I wrote by myself, and then I have contributions and like anthologies and whatnot.
And amazing.
And just for those listening, I know you spoke about the different ways that you work with people. You work with people one-on-one as well.
Yes, I do. I work with people one-on-one. You can visit my website, drswetachawla.com. And that's also how you can connect with me on all social media. So LinkedIn or Instagram. I love connecting with people. I always say, ramble away. I don't get overwhelmed. I love to hear from people. And depending on the seasons I'm in, sometimes I'm working more one-on-one. Sometimes I'm doing more speaking or trainings. But either way, like if you go on my website, you'll see my packages. You'll see the different trainings that I do, and send me a message, and happy to connect and see how I can support you come into your organization or work one-on-one, whatever, or refer you to a book, or I even have guides on my website. So on the store, I have different, like the clarity tool, and which I'm gifting to everybody listening here through that link, Dr. Sweta Chawla /natural, but the reflection planning guide, etc. They're all on there too.
Yeah. And we'll have the links in our show note. And for those listening, it's DrSwetachawla.com, DrSwetachawla.com. Just want everyone to hear it. And have all those links to everything. There's so much goodness and richness on your site. And
thank you so much. I really receive the reflection from both of you. Thank you so much. And I'm just so grateful for the space that you're creating. It's so important when using all of your experience and your gifts, get this out wider. I feel like there's so much unnecessary suffering in the world that through having resources and having ways to be supported, that we wouldn't have to suffer so much. And I want our future generations to be able to have access to and permission. I want them to not even think about being themselves.
Thank you for having the courage to take the journey that you did. I think everyone can relate to your story. There's so many elements in there that I just nodded my head to. So thank you for sharing those, really.
I really appreciate it. And that's one of my top values, courage, connection, and courage. Courage is the harder one.
Yeah,
you are doing it. Thank you so much. We look forward to talking to you again soon.